Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. That was Don Williams, Tulsa Time.
All right, thank you. That was Steve Gordon, Tulsa Time. All right, I want to thank Steve Gordon
for jamming,
and for giving us some lead-in music here. It's June 26th, 2017. Welcome to Let's Talk Native on the LTN Radio Network. This program breaks all the rules for Native radio. No buffalo speeches, no mystic healing, no special Indian prayers. We tackle the real issues facing Native people with a look back at our glorious and our grave history, a tough look at where we're at now, and a look forward to our ongoing battles for sovereignty and autonomy. Let's Talk Native is produced in association with Iroquois Promotions on the LTN Radio Network, streaming live from the Cattaraugus territory of the Seneca Nation, and simulcast on the Gwe, CKWE in Tendanega. You can find us also with our audio stream at www.ltnradionet.com. And of course, we are streaming live on Facebook, so you can find our live stream there. Look, we have two pages that are on there, so I'm going to try to share where we're actually streaming live.
I'm linking it up now.
Okay, all right. Matt's going to share, because we have a Facebook has all kinds of different pages. They've got pages for group pages, they got fan pages, and we linked up to the wrong page. So anyway, we'll do better here. Look, I'm John Kane. I'm your show's host and producer. I've got Matt Hill on the board. I've got Ed here for some of our commentary on the subject that we're going to talk about, and I've got Jake Proud, who's doing some video and going to help us produce our this show for our YouTube channel, which is Let's Talk Native TV. So. That's what we're looking for here. So,
there, the link is up now.
All right, so we're good then. All right, okay. All right, I'm trying to watch this here myself. Okay. Look, we are also.
We're going to get this down pretty quick.
Yeah, we're still testing out our new Mevo camera, and that is a special camera that is for not just web streaming, but streaming live video on Facebook and on YouTube if you want, Periscope and a couple of other mediums. So so we're still working through that. We're trying to figure out whether we can accommodate our whether our internet connectivity can accommodate what we're trying to do here. I know that I had some success using this camera in New York. I haven't had success here yet, so bear with us. I know we're, regardless of what we do here live, we will repost the video that Jake produces, and you'll be able to watch and hear the show that way as well. But again, if you want to go to www.ltnradionet.com, that's where you can listen to the crystal clear audio that we've been producing here out of the studio for several years now. I do want to give acknowledgement to Kelly McMillan, our studio engineer, for helping us with our setup here, and let's get into it, I guess. I am going to pick up on some of the conversation that we had last Friday. I want to delve into the state's efforts to tax us a little bit more. There is a bit of an update, kind of a good news update, but it doesn't take away from what the ongoing efforts are by the state. So I want to talk about that. But before I do that, there is a bit of a historical significance to this date. June 26, 1975 is when two FBI agents were shot and killed in Pine Ridge. And that was what would end up putting Leonard Peltier in prison through a real shady trial and that kind of stuff. So again, two FBI agents were shot, and the FBI has been covering it up ever since. They've never taken responsibility for their acts of aggression against the people who were there in Lakota territory. They have accepted no responsibility for the shots that they had been firing in what was their little reign of terror over these folks. They have accepted no responsibility for the people who were shot and some killed. They will accept no responsibility for for what has now become so commonplace with the militarization of a police presence, which is exactly what they were doing in the 70s there in Lakota Territory. The only thing that they've stood by is they've managed to thwart every effort by Leonard Peltier to either get a new trial or to get a pardon or whatever else. I mean, so as many people who are now fed up with Donald Trump are sitting here singing the praises of Jim Comey, the fired FBI director. There are those of us who are very, very troubled by what the FBI has always represented when it comes to native territories, and that's an ongoing problem for us. And in fact, our ongoing problem doesn't stop with the federal government. It goes on and on as as it relates to our troubles with the state. Our oftentimes local officials here in Seneca Territory, we don't have too much trouble with the local municipalities. Not really. I mean, obviously, Niagara Falls mayor up there is not too crazy about us because if we're not paying him, he's apparently not our friend. He's a friend for hire, I guess. But the oppression that some native people feel in some places, we don't necessarily have a bad relationship with our neighbors. And that's not to say we don't have clashes with, Matt had a clash with the state police over a ticket. I mean, we still have those. And part of it is just we don't share the same world view and the same view of history. In fact, many police officers, judges, politicians are every bit as ignorant of American history as these people who are stopped on the street for these, that video you posted, Matt, on Facebook where nobody can answer.
That was classic. I know. Didn't one of the late night guys, Jay Leno,
and Jimmy Kimmel used to do it all the time too. Yeah, asked just obvious questions.
We should do that as a local flair to that.
People can't answer who fought in the Civil War, who won. When. I mean, they started off the question like, which country is the Panama Canal in? And people couldn't answer that question. How many stars are on the United States flag? And just basic. I mean, just the most basic questions you could possibly think of. And and that's.
And some of these people, one guy was sitting in an office. He had a pretty decent job, and here he is. I don't know.
Oh, I mean, and almost felt like it was unfair that he was being asked these questions. I mean, it's kind of silly, but so when you ask a college student who should be fresh with some of this history being taught to them, and they don't know, that sounds like the youth is so bad. But you know what? We face this thing with seasoned politicians, the people that are in the highest offices of both corporate America and governance are just as ignorant of all this stuff, and that's what we face all the time. Now, if in case, just to kind of go back, last week I mentioned that there was a bill introduced into the state legislature. It was Bill, what's the number? 5789, so 5789. It was introduced by a Brooklyn state senator from Brooklyn, New York, a guy by the name of Martin Golden. And part of what Golden's reason for submitting this bill, it had to do with the fact that fairly recently it's been acknowledged that the majority of tobacco consumed in New York State is not taxed. I mean, and in fact, what folks like the Tax Foundation and other nonpartisan research organizations have determined is that the majority of tobacco consumed in New York State is smuggled in from other states. Smuggled in from other states. And we're not talking about native tobacco here. We're talking about cigarettes that are brought in from Virginia, from New Jersey, from Pennsylvania, from other states where it's, even if it's just a little cheaper, because you have to understand, while there is almost $50 worth of state tax on a carton of cigarettes, there's also another $15 of city tax on top of the, so even if you just leave the city, for instance, so when you talk about these guys from Brooklyn or whatever, even if somebody just leaves the city to buy cigarettes, to smoke them back in the city, they're doing some sort of tax avoidance. They're avoiding at least the city tax. But the fact of the matter is, like I said, almost 60% of the tobacco consumed in New York State is smuggled in from other states. They're smuggled in from outside the state's jurisdiction. So what does the state do to respond to that? They said, well, let's go after the native people. Let's go after the Indians, as they say. So this Senator Golden, he decides that he's going to introduce, the same kind of law that has been kicked around, and of course they've been kicking us around in with their legislative agendas for years. And what they wanted to do was again insist and actually put it into their law now. They stated it already, but they want to put it into their law now that the sales of tobacco from our territories is taxable. Oh, if you sell it to your own people, then maybe it isn't. But to anybody else, it's taxable, which is, of course, categorically wrong. So the whole idea was that all of the cigarettes on our territories, not New York State, on native lands, must, and this is what this is what Golden is trying to push through, must have a New York State stamp on it. Now, there's some language about how they were going to, whether that really represented a New York State tax or not. Up front it would, because they're saying only a New York State wholesaler could sell to native people. So they're also saying that we can't buy from ourselves. We can't buy from each other. We can't buy from our own manufacturers. We can't buy from territory. We can't do native to native trade. That's what this senator was trying to propose. And so in doing so, they're essentially, and this is what I kind of want to get into, what's not said in this law is the direct effects that this law would play if it ever came into an effect. So, and we'll talk about that at a little bit more length. But again, just backing up to the arrogance of a guy who knows nothing about Native people. He lives in Brooklyn, for crying out loud. But a guy who is insisting that our territories are under the jurisdiction of New York State. Now, where does the guy get this impression? I mean, this is like the same kind of people who don't know how many stars are on a U.S. flag to say this kind of ignorant stuff. So what his claim was, well, we're going to craft this thing in such a way. The bottom line is they were going to craft it in such a way that first and foremost, the state would be able to regulate our price. And when I say regulate our price, let's kind of back it up here. Like I said, there's over $50 worth of taxes on a carton of cigarettes at the state level, and then you put another 8% sales tax on top of that. A carton of Marlboros costs $80, $90, $100 or something like that off territory here. On territory, you can buy a carton of Senecas or other native brands for $30. Some places even cheaper than that. So that's where the state is, in spite of the fact that most of the cigarettes that are consumed in the state are smuggled in from other states, which are not native brands. What they're trying to do here is attack our sales, put a specific price tag to it, because what they're saying is that the tax has to be paid unless we have a tax that kind of would force us to charge more. So in other words, if their tax is, say, $50, if the Seneca Nation imposes a tax of $50, then the state will reimburse that tax. So the net price would only go up to $50. So in other words, we're going to tax you unless you tax yourself. And if you tax yourself $5, we'll take $5 off of what you got to remit.
This whole thing sounds like it's not even possible to even get passed. If I don't know, it's not.
It's funny that you should say that.
There's so many loopholes in here and provisions that just aren't logical. For one, that we're not selling the same product. It's tobacco, but it's not the same product. It's totally different, branded, manufactured, sourced. Everything is all, and the real core of it that I heard you say earlier was the native to native trade. How could they restrict native to native trade when we supersede them in those lines? Yeah, thousands of years.
Yeah, thousands of years. Yeah. Well, and
that alone in itself sounds like it's right out the window on that.
Well, here's the update though. The update is that this bill has actually been defeated. It got defeated.
There we go.
It got defeated because of the Rules Committee. When they looked at this thing, they said, "Yeah, this isn't going to work." So this bill has been defeated. Now, and not because it ever went to election. It couldn't make it out of the Rules Committee.
There you go.
So, but that's, I mean, look, that's good news. But the fact that they keep trying is part of the problem. And here's where in spite of, and I don't know what the specific rule was. I mean, Ed, you talked to Todd Gates. You talked to the president today. He told you that it was killed in the rules committee.
Yeah, he didn't explain why. I don't know if he didn't know or if I just didn't understand what he was talking. But it didn't get any further, and therefore it's been defeated. As to what's going to happen next is another question.
Yeah, so now they'll try to clean it up a little bit. But here's, again, lots of problems with this thing from a rule-making standpoint, as Matt was indicating. But here to I guess to expand the point that Matt was bringing up, here's where it gets even more complicated. If what New York State is intending on doing is trying to control our source of tobacco, which is kind of what they did when we were buying from New York State wholesalers. In fact, even native brands were being distributed from New York State wholesalers back a decade ago. So, but when they cut off their New York State wholesalers and said they could no longer sell to us without state stamps on them, we just expanded our own supply in most of our stores. I'm not saying you can't find premium national U.S. brands on some shelves, but most of the stores here in Seneca territory won't even carry it. Part of the reason they won't carry it is those very companies turned on us. They were our best buddies when we were expanding their sales base.
Cut big advertising checks and everything.
They were doing all kinds of things to endear themselves to us, but then they turned on us with everything from shutting down the mail order sales. And one of the areas that they turned on us a great deal has to do with the Master Settlement Act, and that's where I want to kind of get to, because here's the thing. When New York State says only New York State stamped product can be on our shelves, what essentially they're saying, they're not saying it, but the implication is native brands can't be on our shelves anymore, because native brands can't be stamped by New York State. So yes, you might ask, well, why would that be? Because native brands are not going to submit to the Master Settlement Act, and that's a deal that Big Tobacco made when they were caught lying about the addictive nature of nicotine and all that other stuff. And they made a deal where they were going to put money into create a fund that would go back to the states to cover secession aids, health issues. They were supposed to do all these things for the state to offset the cost of the dangers and the health, the health hazards that cigarettes represent. So they create this Master Settlement Act. So the big tobacco, the big names, Philip Morris, R.J. Reynolds, Altria, which is Philip Morris now, Lorillard, all the big tobacco, all the brands you know and love, they have to pay into a fund, and that fund gets released to the states. Now, not so big tobacco, so the off brands, they have to escrow the money, and they don't necessarily pay it to the state, but it sits in a fund. It sits in an escrow account in case anybody ever makes a claim against them or something like that. It's kind of a bizarre thing. But the whole idea of the Master Settlement Act, it had a window for which manufacturers could participate. Most native brands can't participate in the Master Settlement Act. They were shut out of it. So the fact of the matter is that New York State could not go back to distributing, or New York State wholesalers could not distribute native brands because of the Master Settlement Act. And so they can't be stamped, they can't be distributed. And here's the other thing. If they did distribute them without our participation in the Master Settlement Act, it would also shut off the big tobacco's fund from being released to the state, because that's the argument they made. They made that argument to New York State in particular. They said, look, we're not going to release Master Settlement Act funds to New York State because you're not enforcing law against native manufacturers. So, I mean, that's always been, that's the other part of their plan, right? Right? So that's the way that's worked out. So, I mean, the other thing is they're saying that they have to be stamped. Our guys aren't New York State wholesalers, and they want to say they have to be licensed wholesalers. So their plan would be to shut off, to kill manufacturers, wholesalers, distributors, anybody who's involved with native brands, and of course, in doing so, would kill our retail. And I mean, when I say our retail, I'm talking to you from here from the Seneca territory of Cattaraugus. But every territory, whether it's the territories on Long Island, or whether it's Mohawk Land or Oneida, Onondaga, Cayuga, Tuscarora. We're all in this business because it's one of those few areas that we've been able to not only market our regulatory advantage, which is the fact that we can sell a carton of cigarettes for $20 or $30 compared to the $80, $90, or $100 that off territory. And of course, we aren't carrying those major brands, but we're carrying our own. So we've actually backwards integrated into manufacturing, into the the skill set of branding and marketing and all of that stuff. As they've done things like killed mail order, as they shut off their New York State wholesalers, as they've threatened us year in and year out over and over again, we've still carved out this business. Now, is it a business that is tobacco my favorite area of commerce? No, but the thing about tobacco is it does represent a good example of maintaining our sovereignty, and maintaining a certain level, like I said, of backwards integration to where we take a product that we know is a consumable, whether it's a great consumable or not, it's a consumable, so it's something that people are going to buy on a regular basis, that we can play a role in manufacturing. In fact, we got people who are putting in fields of tobacco, Eric White and Will Perry. We've got people in many of our territories, not just here in Seneca territory, but throughout native lands, coast to coast, on the Canadian side, the U.S. side. We have people that are actually growing tobacco for this purpose. So we've reclaimed a place in the tobacco industry, a culture or a commerce that frankly was ours before white man ever came here. I mean, Iroquois or Haudenosaunee tobacco has been discovered by anthropologists in places that demonstrated the extent of our trade. From the northwest to the southwest, they have found strains of our tobacco dating back hundreds or thousands of years. Not hundreds of, but hundreds and thousands of years.
There you go.
Yeah. So the fact that we've reclaimed a space, and not a big space, but a space in what really has turned into almost an exploitive industry in terms of the tobacco industry, driven by the likes of Philip Morris and Laurel Art and R.J. Reynolds, and on the and on the Canadian side, there's there's De Mauriers and Export Bordes. There's a whole bunch of other brands that again have become very, very exploitive, and especially very exploitive when it comes to the relationship with the provinces or the states on taxation. I mean, the idea that a carton of cigarettes only costs a few dollars to manufacture. I mean, it really does. It only costs a few dollars to manufacture. But the idea that you got to pay for over $100 for a carton of cigarettes in New York City because some of the powers that be think that they should be able to, and let me get this explain this. They want to be able to sin tax you, and I don't mean sin tax with a S and a Y. I mean they want to tax you for the sin of tobacco consumption. That's really what they're. I mean, that's really what they're saying. They're saying we want to tax you so high, and we're going to claim that we're taxing you very highly for your own benefit. The fact that the state benefits from it, or the municipalities benefit from it because of that revenue. I mean, the first thing that Mike Bloomberg complained about when he jacked the city tax up to $15 a carton, in spite of the fact that he had millions of dollars coming into the city, he said, "Yeah, we're getting millions of dollars, but we're pretty sure that not everybody's paying." So instead of noting that they were increasing this revenue stream, instead of taking that kind of note of it, they decided that they're going to try to squeeze the folks out in Long Island a little bit more. I mean, this guy, this Martin Golden, and then you were told this, that his biggest concern was seemed to be expressing how much tobacco was coming in from New Jersey.
Yes.
The reality is they got more tobacco coming in there from North Carolina and Virginia than any place else, because it's not that far a drive from New York City to get down to the really cheap states. I mean, it used to be when you used to drive out of New York into New Jersey, even to go up like the Palisades Parkway, the gas on the Jersey side was 50 cents a gallon cheaper. 50 cents a gallon. I mean, we don't undercut New York State that much on our territories, but New Jersey sure as heck did. And we talked, Matt, we talked about last week about how in Pennsylvania they got smoke shops right on the Pennsylvania side of the line. I mean, that's kind of
Okay, I went to Erie this weekend, and one thing observation I made: what is New York's answer to that? What's on the New York side of the borders? Porn shops.
Oh, we're gonna fix those other states.
I mean, in Pennsylvania they got fireworks, and down the eastern side there they got cigarette shops, but this side we got porn
strip
shops.
joints, right? Yeah. Great.
Dirty bookstores.
Great. Yeah. Well, you make us proud, New York.
I didn't stop. I had to keep going.
Okay. All right. Hey, we're at the bottom of the hour. I want to hit on this a little bit more. I just think this is a big issue, and I think we have to stay vigilant. So when we come back, we'll talk about that, and we'll talk about how we have to stay on top of this, and how we have to continue to educate people. We'll do that when we come back. What are we going out with here, man?
Little Frank Juan. Well, what made the red man red?
I don't know. What did? All right, we'll go with Frank Juan.
Personally, I should prefer to see the Aborigines. And the Indians, too. This should be most enlightening.
What makes the red man red? Teach 'em all about red man. What made the red man red? 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 Teach 'em all about red man. Red man.
Your history books, your holidays, Thanksgiving lies and Columbus Day. Tell me what I know more than the teacher. Tell me what I know more than the preacher. Tell me why you think the red man is red, stained with the blood from the land he bled. Tell me why you think the red man is dead, with a fake headdress on your head. Tell me what you know about thousands of nations, displaced and confined to concentration camps called reservations. We died for the birth of your nation. Hollywood portrays us wrong. History books say we're gone. You got a church, say we're wrong. We're from the earth, it made us strong.
Many moons, red man fight pale face. What made the red man red? What made the red man red? What made the red man red? What made the red man red?
Please, boys, do you want to stay here and grow up like savages? Like savages?
Savages as savage does. The white man came and ravaged us, caused genocide. Look in my eyes and tell me who you think the savage was.
Pale face,
Savages?
pale face.
Savages?
Indian celebration continued late into the night.
Savages?
Manifest destiny, arrest what's best for me. The killer culture, America made a mess of me. You inherited everything we died for, and all we get is a goddamn mascot. Manifest destiny, arrest what's best for me. The killer culture, America made a mess of me. You inherited everything we died for, and all we get is a goddamn mascot.
Skins, red skins, red souls, red skins.
Many moons, red man fight pale face. Sometime you win, sometime we win.
Red skins.
Made me red when you killed my people. Made me red when you bled my tribe. Made me red when you killed my people.
Savages? Savages?
All right, thanks for coming back. Look, Let's Talk Native is sponsored by Ross and Holly John and the RJE family of businesses, Eric White and ERW Enterprises, by good friends like Ed Schindler, Tracy Brown, Cynthia Trice, Scott Snyder, Neville Spring, Sugar Montour, and there are many others who have helped the program in the past that I still really need to acknowledge, because we're into our 8th year now. That's 8 years that we've been educating, entertaining, and informing people about, a full range of stuff. I mean, and sometimes it is just pure entertainment. We've had, performers, we've had singers, we had a couple of comedians. We had the guys, the 1491 guys on here. So, and of course we've had authors.
Who am I?
Yeah, we're entertainers. We're jokes.
Joke tellers.
All right. Yeah, we got Matt here every week. So I mean, but part of this whole idea is to have conversations that that perhaps you're not having in the absence of this show or the things that we try to bring up. And again, I want to thank those the other organizations that help us do this. So I want to thank folks like Unity Stream and Apache Radio Net. Of course, I want to. They help us provide streaming through our LTN radio network. I want to thank CKWE in Tandanega, Darren Doreen for providing us with simulcasts, with rebroadcasts up in Tandanega to our Mohawk communities on the other side of the lake. He also helps provide us with a phone number, and if you want to call in, I'll give you that number. I realize I should have done in the first half hour, but the number if you want to call in is 855-967-0463. That's the number to call.
Hey, we got to thank the listeners too.
Oh, go! I'm not done yet. Because I also want to thank the other media sources. I forget the number, so I gotta feel like once I remember, I better say it then before I forget. I want to thank Netroots Radio for rebroadcasting the show. I want to thank Real People's Media, Indigenous Resistance Radio, and of course I want to thank the listeners, because most of you don't just listen. You guys share the show. You share some of the audio, the video, and because you do that, we get to expand the base of listenership. As we refine this product, not only with our web streaming here, and we're still working out some of the internet connectivity for our Mevo camera. We dropped off a little bit in the first half of the show, but we'll work on that. And of course, we plan to enhance some of our Let's Talk Native TV programming. We're gonna do something that's a little bit more set up as a show, a little bit more, some more short video stuff that we're gonna put on not only on the YouTube channel, but also link them to Facebook and Twitter and the like. So we do plan to expand all that, and that's kind of what Jake and I are working on when we're not doing the show. So so this is all part of what we're doing, and so you, the listeners, you, the folks who pick us up on Facebook and follow. Not just the stuff we do here on the show, but even some of the threads and the conversations that we have on Facebook. You are a part of expanding the conversation, and that's what the show is all about. This latest issue. Look, we've had some pretty good battles with the state over the years over tobacco, and to a lesser extent fuel sales. But tobacco has been that line we drew in the sand. It's where we have put some of our major investment in our economies. Every one of our native territories, Long Island, Mohawk territory, Eastern Door to Western Door, tobacco has become. I know everybody thinks gaming, that it's all about gaming. Gaming is an enterprise that may fund the administrations, the governing administrations. So. They do create significant revenue, and there's no question about that. But in terms of economy building, tobacco has played a bigger role in us reestablishing both a private sector, and of course, many territories have nation stores that are run by their governments as well. Seneca Nation has the one stops, but there's also a very, very vibrant and successful private sector. And that private sector has been able to not only create employment and just increase revenue to our territories, but it's also increased the native to native trade, the trade from one territory to another, and you can't downplay the significance of that. The fact that we've utilized, even if it's in a modern way, a traditional trade good as tobacco is. It's unfortunate it's only tobacco, but the fact that we've utilized this traditional trade good that was ours to revitalize an economy, that's the good thing. Now, look, I'm not advocating. I know cigarette smoking is bad, and I don't advocate people smoke to benefit us. I would never suggest that. But the fact that it's a legal trade in the United States, in Canada, in the States, in the provinces. Certainly anybody suggesting that we don't have a right to be involved in that, or in order for us to be involved in it, that we somehow have to bow our heads and fit underneath state regulations or provincial regulations or federal regulations. There's just no basis in law to make that claim. This Senator Golden from the 22nd Senate District in Brooklyn, he's clueless. He doesn't get it. He just doesn't understand that the authority that he's trying to assert in this law, granted, I understand it, it's dead. It's been killed through the Rules Committee, and I get that. And it should have been killed. But it's not. It should be killed for a variety of reasons. Among them is the fact that he's absolutely violating our sovereignty. That he's absolutely violating or trying to assert authority that he doesn't have as a state senator, that the state doesn't have as as just a member state of the United States. We never yielded that authority. We never suggested that we have accepted some subordinate role in our own lives to the state. And for the state to suggest that they can tax us, and again, I brought it up last week, and Ed, we talked about it before the show. Part of the whole irony, or I guess the discrimination, I guess, that is being established with some of this this attempted rule change or legislation, is that New York State acknowledges that all consumers, New York State consumers, can purchase up to 2 cartons of cigarettes outside of New York State's jurisdiction and bring it in legally. That's not considered smuggling. If you go into Virginia and you buy 2 cartons of cigarettes and you bring it home to your home in Syracuse, New York, or into Brooklyn, if it's 2 cartons or less, it's exempt from tax. And I'm not saying that you get to dodge the radar. No, I'm not saying that they're going to look the other way. No, it is exempt from New York State tax. So up to 2 cartons can be brought into, even in New York City with their elevated tax rate, up to 2 cartons can be brought into New York State free from taxes, exempt from New York State taxes. The fact that New York State will say, yes, you can go to Pennsylvania and do that. Yes, you can go to Virginia and do that. Yes, you can go to Canada and do that. Or you can go to Mexico. You can go to Cuba. I don't know. But you can't go to Seneca territory, or you can't go to Puspatuck or Shinnecock. I mean, how much more racist can you be? And the thing is, it is racist because they're not just saying, yes, you can go to sister states or sister countries, but you're not going to go to some place that we have our thumbs that we're stomping on, like native territories. I mean, I don't know how else you characterize it. And to suggest that they can be that abusive to an economy. I mean, again, I can't emphasize enough. We've built an economy. We built dozens of native brands.
That's
from
because
nothing.
We're Indian country.
Yeah, enemy land. Yeah, that's how.
We're Indian country, literally.
Well, we should play that clip, right? If you can find it. Yeah, I mean, the idea that they are still looking at us as somehow the enemy, and that, again, there's probably billions of dollars the state is losing in their cigarette tax revenue to other states. And so what is their solution? To try to go after us. I mean, it is just so absurd. And here's the thing. The reason they're losing billions of dollars is because they have an unreasonable. New York State prides itself at being at having the highest tax on tobacco. It costs more to buy a carton of cigarettes. It used to be. We used to laugh because Canada it was so bad. Oh, the fact that Canada would put $50, $60 on taxes on a carton of cigarettes seemed unreasonable. But that's exactly what New York State is doing. It costs over $100 for a carton of cigarettes in New York City. Close to that every place else. I mean, that's... And it only costs a few dollars to manufacture these things. You know, even after you take... I mean, you look at a carton of cigarettes. There's like $46 or something like that in state tax on a carton. There's another $4.60 or $4 something that goes into that Master Settlement Act I was telling you about. Then you have the state tax, which is or the city tax in New York City, which is 15. Plus the federal government has excise tax of $10 on there too. I mean, that's how much. And then sales tax on top. If you're already hitting close to $100, now you put another 8% sales tax on that. That's another $8 on top of it. I mean, it is insane. And again, for them to do that just based on this holier than thou attitude that they're going to tax you for your own benefit, and of course the other way of looking at it is you're costing us because of how much you're damaging your health, so we're going to tax you so we can offset the expense of your health care, which gets into this other health care conversation. Now, ironically, and I don't know if you're aware of this, but the tax that this is cigarette tax. It doesn't apply to things like pipe tobacco or cigar tobacco. So if you're affluent and you're smoking the expensive or the posh tobacco, your flavored special tobacco for your pipe or your expensive imported cigars, no, they're not taxed. Wait
a minute, do you know if blunts are tobacco wrappers, or are those taxed?
I don't think so. I think
I mean, because that throws out your class definition.
Well, but they would have had to. It is to protect the tobacco.
Yeah.
Cigars and pipe tobacco. That's what. So if a few people are gonna buy these wraps for whatever they're doing else they're doing, that's a whole other issue.
I don't know. There's a lot of wrappers laying around on the floor. I know that.
Well, I'm just saying that the elite, so the common man's tobacco, cigarettes, are what's being taxed, not the again the affluent tobacco that's associated with expensive cigars or expensive pipe tobacco.
Weed's getting kind of expensive nowadays.
Well, look, they'll probably legalize that because they'll be able to create more revenue there too. But I mean, I just looking at tobacco again, you can't get away from the fact that they're going to tax the poor man's tobacco highly. I mean, highly, and it's not just about taxing poor man's tobacco and cigarettes. Cigars and pipe tobacco can still be mailed. Remember the whole mail order thing?
Yep.
You can still ship tobacco if it's pipe tobacco and cigars. You can still mail that. UPS, FedEx, the post office, but you can't do that with cigarettes. So again, there's a class war here because there's obviously a different consumer and a different class of consumer for cigars and pipe tobacco than for cigarettes. And look, we didn't create that class. I mean, we are only responding to what the American market and the capitalists have done with the product that we regard as sacred. I mean, tobacco for us was something. Yes, it was something we smoked. It's also something we offered. It's things that we did things with tobacco that had more to do with a culture. It wasn't just an addiction. It wasn't something that people did out of addiction. It's something that we grew and we traded and we shared and we did ceremony with it. It was part of a social thing. The idea of trading and smoking tobacco, whether it was in a pipe or whether it was burning it as an offering. I mean, we had a completely different use and application of tobacco and how we valued it. Now it's turned into something. Let's face it, the cigarette industry turned it into nicotine delivery devices. That's what they called them. And that whole battle that ended up in being the Master Settlement Act, it was about converting what was a native tobacco product into what would essentially become these nicotine delivery devices. They even enhanced these things. They did things so they become more addictive. I mean, that's what the tobacco industry did to generate revenue. And you know what? They bought politicians left and right. And that same tobacco industry, now they actually wrote the regulations for Congress when they were trying to kill, or when they did kill the mail order tobacco. That was written by Lorillard or R.J. Reynolds, Altria. I mean, that's how they have drafted their own tobacco regulations. I mean, when you you've made it. You've made it when you control an industry so much that you get to write your own regulations for the federal government's going to hold you to. I mean, that you've arrived. It's kind of like the oil industry. Yeah. We're so powerful. We're even going to create the subsidies. We're going to create all the laws that regulate that. They're going to hold our feet to the fire. They must laugh about it. These guys must sit around and say, "Yeah, how funny is it that we get to regulate ourselves?" We're
Smoking
self-regulating.
big cigars.
Yeah, smoking big cigars. Yeah, yeah, just not too close to their leaking pipelines, I guess. But no, I mean this is the absurdity of all. But I posted before I learned from you, Ed, today that this had died in committee in the Rules Committee. I asked the question: are we ready for a fight? And I think that's the question. And I posed the question. I wasn't making this determination, but I posed the question: has gaming made us soft? Or has it made us? Has it empowered us? Has gaming and annuities, backed us away from running down to the thruway or shutting down a railway, or has it said no? Now we have even more reason to fight it. I would hope it's the latter. I hope everybody who is now perhaps had a little bit of an uptick in their lifestyles, at least economically only here I'm talking about, with gaming and with annuities and that kind of stuff. I would hope that revenue should create more of an incentive to fight and defend your sovereignty, not less. I know it can go either way. I mean, I know when even in Mohawk territory, I think when back when Oka and the battles in Gunazadage over a golf course, there were some questions and people said, look, we can shut down the bridge again, but it's going to hurt our commerce. I mean, and we heard this even in 92 and in 97. Yeah, we can shut things down, but it might hurt the patronage to our bingo halls. So you get into this question when you have to fight the state. Do you have to be concerned about how much it's going to hurt your gaming revenue? And so are people so dependent on that? And I don't even know if that's true, but is that the logic? I mean, it's kind of like after 9/11 when people were saying, "Wow, you can't go down on the thruway now. You don't try to shut the thruway down now. You're going to be listed as a terrorist. They're going to open up a can of Patriot Act on your ass." I mean, that's literally what people were saying. Oh, they've got new laws now. Now, if you think you're protesting, but they're going to call you a terrorist. So and some people buy into that. I've heard elected Native politicians say that. I've heard lawyers who are advising Native people say that. Instead of taking a stronger stance, I mean, for me, I say, look, let them try to charge me. Again, if nobody else, let them try to charge me with a violation of Patriot Act because I'm defending our sovereignty. I mean, to me, that's a battle I'd be willing to take on. I'm not asking to get arrested or go to jail. I've done that before, but I'm not asking for that. But it seems to me, if every administration has to have this argument about reauthorizing the Patriot Act, if we're not prepared to show the abuses of it and to demonstrate that and say, look, here's an example of why this thing shouldn't be reauthorized. Look what they did with this thing. They used Patriot Act against Dakota Access Pipeline, or they used it against Bears Ears, or wherever. I mean, wherever we take a stand. And I think we have to say, no, I dare you to use it. I dare you to use your anti-terrorism laws. And we're saying, whether it's Black Lives Matter or divest or resist or whatever else. Look, we live in a time where people have to become more politically active. They have to become more socially active in these issues. And I guess that was my question as it related to this specifically. Because I got to tell you, this may have died in the Rules Committee this time, but they're going to try to clean it up. They're going to try to clean it up. They're going to say, okay, here were the problems with it.
Let's try this.
Yeah, that didn't work.
We got subpart B now. We got it.
Yeah, we'll scratch this and we'll do it this way. That's what they do. This same piece of legislation has hung around for years. It just got reintroduced last month. So it got introduced last month. It actually went through 2 readings, and that's part of the process. This thing was in the legislative process when it died in the Rules Committee. And so, guys like Martin Golden, who's a Republican, I might add, and which kind of brings me to another area. I know we're getting down to the end of the show, but this is what my caution is to Native and those that claim to be Native leadership. Don't get sucked into their politics. because when we started, when the Seneca Nation announced that the revenue payments to the state had termed out and that it was over, the immediate reaction from the governor's office was, "Oh no, you still owe," and of course, a couple of the mayors like Byron Brown and Paul Deister, he was adamant. "Oh no, they still owe us. They owe us this money. $20 million has to come to us." And so it was easy for us to look at the Democrats, because Cuomo's a Democrat, Deister's a Democrat, Byron Brown's a Democrat, and say, "All right, you guys are taking a pretty strong stand against us. And if the Democrats are going to line it behind the governor, where are the Republicans?" So some of the Republicans, sounded like, "Oh yeah, oh no, we get you. We know, we agree with you. That bad old governor, that Andrew Cuomo, yeah, he's a bad guy." And yet, they're trying to pass legislation like this. They're trying to pass legislation like, to kill our private sector economy, to kill the economy that's carried us for the last 30 years. So when I think anybody says that, the Republicans have been more receptive to us ever since we pulled the plug on, or since we didn't pull the plug, but ever since the revenue sharing termed out. Yeah, just be careful. Just be careful, because they're still lined up with Chris Collins, who is just a jerk of a congressman, and Tom Reed. These guys who are killing health care for the vast number of Americans and other people. These guys are in with Trump. I mean, so if you think that somehow because the governor's a Democrat and there's a couple of Democratic mayors that are now against you, that somehow the Republicans who oppose them are, and gets down to, again, the enemy of my enemy is not my friend. Mm-hmm. So if you think the Republicans are our friends because the Democrats aren't, then you're not looking at this thing closely enough. I get back to the same thing. I made an observation several weeks ago that the difference between Democrats and Republicans is like the difference between the white privileged and the white supremacists. And that's the way, every day, the more I've thought about that conclusion or that deduction that I've made, the more it rings true. Because I keep seeing Democrats just being so full of themselves and so privileged. And forget about the role that people of color play in either one of those parties, because we don't. We don't. And the Republicans assert themselves. This guy in Brooklyn, when you see the way he crafted this bill, and it's got white supremacy written all over it. Oh, of course we have the right to do that. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's not. This is about saying, yes, we have the authority. And the flip side are the Democrats who think, oh yeah, if we sin tax, we're gonna take care of people. We're gonna charge them more taxes because we need to take care of them because they're not being responsible. So yeah, if that sounds like my sissy voice, I'm sorry. That's what I was going for. Is it working? Yeah, no.
You have to also realize that this guy belongs to the same party the party's willing to eliminate health care.
Yeah, not just but native health care, Indian health service, but also health care in general.
Everyone, who can't afford it.
Yeah, I mean, they're trying to cut all kinds of social programs and that kind of stuff. They're going to tap into Social Security. They're going to reduce Medicare, Medicaid. But these guys want to kill the works, and yet these guys who want to claim that we're going to cut taxes, and this guy wants to tax us. I mean, if there's you would think that okay, well that doesn't make sense. I thought the Republicans are all about cutting taxes. No, not when it comes to Native people. They're all about saying, no, we're not going to recognize your distinction. You are beneath us, and stop trying to act like you're sovereign. That's the attitude that these guys have. Yes. That's white supremacy. I mean, I don't know how else you view it, but so I think we have to be vigilant. We have to pay attention because this kind of stuff doesn't ever go away for long. It only goes away for a little while. So hey, look, we'll be back here on Friday. I am in New York this week. So you can catch my show, Let's Talk with John Kane on WBAI. That if you're in the city, it's at 99.5 on the FM dial. Shawnee Rice will be with me as well. you can stream it on www.wbai.org, and that's where you can find the live stream there. Now, I'm also doing a film event at the Brooklyn Commons on Wednesday night. That's at 7 o'clock at the Brooklyn Commons, and we'll be screening Acts of Defiance, the story of Mohawk resistance. It involves the Oka crisis, but really a lot more than that as well. So that's Wednesday at 7 p.m. at the Brooklyn Commons at 388 Atlantic Avenue, and then on Thursday morning from 10 till noon on WBAI FM 99.5. You can catch Let's Talk with John Kane and Shawnee Rice. So we'll see you then. Yahweh.
Yeah.